just jump into it. So hello.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi. I'm glad that you're on the recording with me today. For anybody who doesn't know myself or Dr. Paris, I'm Rachel. I'm the wellness coach at Integrative Wellness Centers. Of course, this is Dr. Paris.
Hello. Excited to be doing this.
Hello. A wealth of knowledge, truly, and just a pure gem. So I'm super excited to be talking with her a bit today. We're definitely going to dive into some pretty common questions that are coming up when we're talking to patients these days, given the COVID-19 pandemic that's going on right now. Just some tangible things that we can do, a little Q&A, that type of stuff. So if you guys like this type of content, if you guys like the kind of Q&A style, just sitting here talking to you all about some topics that patients bring up, let us know. We'd love to do more. Drop us some questions in the comments below, shoot me a message or whatever, and we're happy to dive into any more of those topics and things like that. So one of the common things that we're hearing a lot from patients is this idea of, why am I so tired? Why am I so stressed out when I have no reason to be, right? So I think a lot of patients are feeling this type of stress a little bit, which we'll get into. This idea of thinking, I'm feeling unmotivated, I'm tired, I'm stressed out, but I'm supposed to be laying on the couch all day. So why am I so stressed, right? So let's open it up a bit and talk more about stress in general. So what would you say, like, what is stress? Just kind of backing it up to the bare bones. What is stress?
Well, I mean, by definition, stress is an adaptation to change. It's a physiological adaptation to any kind of a change. So mental, emotional, physical, psychological, environmental. And I think the most common explanation for stress is that metaphorical running from the tiger. I use that with patients all the time, where even though we're no longer seeing tigers as threats anymore, at least on this part of the world, that's how our bodies are still wired. We're supposed to see a threat or a danger. We mobilize our resources. We make stress hormones. We get away from the tiger. We pump blood to our heart and our lungs and our muscles. And then that stressor is supposed to go away. Either we got away from the tiger or we didn't. And right now, even prior to the pandemic, I think we're living in a time where stress is at an all-time high. And so that mechanism really does not shut off. So I think what many of us are already going into this pandemic unknowingly being really stressed out and already quite depleted. And now we've layered on this huge crisis.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I think stress is one of those things that obviously impacts our body, and I think in ways that we don't necessarily think about, and it impacts our body in different types of ways. But I think we have stress coming from so many different sources that we often think, oh, I'm not really stressed. I mean, work is okay, but there's stress in so many different types of ways. Running late
Absolutely.
to work, the alarm clock going off, rushing home for dinner, relationship fight, kids are screaming, whatever. It's kind of this constant stress that's going on in the body. So it's constantly taxing our immune system, our cells, our mental, energy, and the added stress of this pandemic that's going on. Mm-hmm. Even though some people might not be in the work environment anymore, there's still this added stress of obviously the unknown and things like that. And with stress, it's very catabolic, meaning that it breaks down, and it breaks down our body, right? So if you're continuously being stressed out, that's going to create a lot of cell damage, otherwise
Absolutely.
known as inflammation, right? So if we have these perky little grapes, and those are our cells, and we have this inflammation caused by this stress, whether it be very, very big or kind of acute, it creates a lot of cell damage. So now we have these little raisins, right? So that's kind of what's going on in the body on that cellular level, but trying to figure out where the stress is coming from whether it be acute, the constant little stressors of the day,
Mm-hmm.
or this underlying chronic pandemic that we're in. It makes sense why we're so stressed out and so feeling so tired, because it's breaking down our body.
Absolutely.
And that's it's kind of my take on it a little bit there.
And I think that we don't understand how stressed out we are typically in general. As a population, we lead crazy lives compared to a generation before, compared to our parents, compared to our grandparents. We're living in very, very different times. And consequently, we're also seeing much more illnesses that were not as prevalent in their generation becoming more and more prevalent. Obesity, diabetes, cancer, cardiovascular disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all of these inflammatory conditions, and I love that analogy of the grapes turning into raisins because it's a perfect one, are becoming more and more abundant in our culture. And so as a society, we're getting less and less and less healthy. So all the things that we see as very epidemic in our office and in every office across the country is the classic, the brain fog, the lack of sleep, the low motivation, the low mood, the pain. And these are all inflammatory in nature, because we know now that as much as we hate the word stress, we can really understand how it has an impact physiologically on so many different systems of our body.
Oh, for sure. And stress is one of those things that kind of lights the fire to long-term disease. So whether it's kind of slow going or whatnot, stress just lights those up, and when you have one, you're likely to have two or three other ones. And that's kind of, stress lights that fire a little bit and kind of really keeps it going. And I think when we're talking about, I'm always so tired, I'm so stressed out right now, but I have no reason to be. And it's kind of peeling back those layers a little bit and saying, okay, well, what kind of things are stressing us out now? And it's this loss of normalcy and a sense of the unknown. And I think just that even in general causes this very uneasy feeling, and initially is stress, right? That uncertainty is huge. Would you kind of agree? Or would you
having looked at it, I've looked at this in other studies where uncertainty is one of the biggest stressors. And as human beings, I think we like having goals, right? We like knowing that A comes after B comes after C, and we have a stepwise fashion in the way that we want to do things. And right now, there is so much uncertainty, not only locally and personally and globally, but in every single way that we typically are accustomed to supporting ourselves, right? Financially, our work, our children. We're not only worried about ourselves, we're worried about our older parents, our grandparents, we're worried about our communities. So there is so much uncertainty, not only in the immediate future, but also in the long-term future. It's like, when are we going to hit herd immunity? When is the vaccine going to be available? When? And that's a conversation that kind of keeps percolating. And ultimately, we don't know the answer to that. So there's a lot of uncertainty, which I think leads to a lot of fear and a lot of anger. And those emotions themselves are incredibly draining.
Yeah.
You said it best in saying that stress is really catabolic. What that means is it breaks down your tissues. And if you're in a breakdown state, you're not going to have energy, right? Your body's going to begin to draw from other resources. And in some ways, there's no such thing as a free lunch. If you're not doing some of the right things right now, your body is going to begin to drain those resources. We're essentially trying to operate a car that has a gas tank that's essentially empty.
Yeah, literally my car at the moment. So figuratively and literally,
right?
I'm like, humans, I think, are just they love their routine. And I think we, as like on this side of the world, thrive on that consistency, because that keeps us very sane, when there's a million things running around. And I think the world that we're living in is creating more things for more convenience, so that we can do more things, and at this faster pace, so it's causing us to slow down a little bit, which in itself is creating a lot of discomfort, where we're saying, I can't slow down. I have to go, plus that change in normalcy, that different types of demands that we're not used to having, homeschooling, cooking more, being more self-sufficient at home and boredom at home, you know, without the constant distraction of things to do and places to go. And I think that in itself is causing this stress, as we mentioned, on the body, but in a very new way that, you know, people are like, I'm not stressed, but I'm feeling so tired and drained because it's this mental energy, you know, or this mental, it's draining to really, really think about those things.
Yeah, we're having to sit in a level of discomfort that, like you said, we've never had to do before. So not only is metaphorically the sky falling, normally all the things that we would typically go to in order to self-soothe are no longer available.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just pop over to a girlfriend's house and have dinner. You can't go out and sit on a patio and have a cup of coffee. You can't go to the mall and buy something. You can't go and get your hair done to make you feel better. So many of these things that we're so accustomed to doing are now also stripped away from us. And there is a whole new routine that we are all adapting to. Working from home is not easy. There's a lot of things and obstacles in the way of working from home. So we're all kind of doing our best with that. Yeah. But I think, you know, on a positive note, I think we're taking leadership. You know, we're homeschooling our kids. We are cooking more, we're cleaning more, we're probably getting out into the garden, we are going for walks more often. So there is a silver lining here, but I think the demands are a lot higher because a lot of the things that we're so accustomed to outsourcing, maybe it's getting a cleaning lady, maybe somebody comes and does your lawn, maybe you have grocery delivery services already set up, maybe you're used to grabbing food on the way home 4 or 5 times a week. All of those things we are now having to, in some ways, relearn how to do.
Yeah, totally. Which I think hopefully shows the resiliency and the being very adaptive to things changing as humans, where I think we like to be so set in our ways that we're like, oh, this is the way I'm going to do it. And that's it. Kind of pushes us to change, to be better, to be resilient. And I think kind of a few weeks into this now, I think people are kind of seeing that. And so I think we kind of answered that question a little bit as far as why am I so tired and stressed out when I have no reason to be? It's like, there's so many reasons to be, you know, be gentle with yourself, look inward, it is okay to feel these feelings and be stressed given how the world is going and this change of normalcy and things like that. You know, it's okay to feel that stress because I think we kind of dived into that sense of unknown is a big cause of the stress. So kind of switching gears a bit as far as what are some forward movement things that we can do, some tangible things that we can talk about for people and our patients and whatnot. And, you know, stress, this change can be positive, right? It can be in a sense that catalyst for change to grow yourself a little bit. You know, so as far as that goes, what do you think, you know, we can do right now? A couple of things we can talk about right now to combat that stress. What would you say?
Well, we didn't touch upon this, but obviously getting off media as much as possible. I think there's a really fine line between being informed and being paralyzed. Yes, there's some positive news coming out, but for the most part, it is negative news. And finding that balance between being aware of what's going on, but also not sitting in it is important. I mean, all of the research from positive psychology shows us that positive thoughts create more positive behaviors and positive actions. And the contrapositive, no pun intended, is also true, which is that if we're constantly surrounded with negativity, it is ultimately paralyzing. And so I'm not saying don't worry because there's plenty to worry about, but I think recognizing that worry is not constructive and that you're right, stress does have a really beneficial role in our evolution. There's a word in biology called hormesis, and we apply that a lot to plants and to animals, and this idea that if you stress a system just enough, it will grow, it will change, it will evolve. And so I think the biggest thing that we have control over right now is our perspective, you know, changing the things that we can change. And that is hopefully really empowering for patients because now is a really great time to take control of our health and do the things that we can do. Some of these things are really simple, but there is an irony to this in that oftentimes the things that we want to do are not good for us, and oftentimes the things that we don't want to do are really good for us.
So simple,
and
yeah. So
all of the things here are things that we can do on our own. They're not sexy or exotic. They're the things that grandma would have talked to us about when we were young and sick. So things like going to sleep on time. So kind of self-parenting and getting rest is important. That's where we create melatonin, and that's our sleep hormone. We can't make melatonin if we're stressed out, but melatonin in regards to the current pandemic also plays a role. We know that it has a lot of immune modulating effects. Melatonin is used in naturopathic oncology because it does help with balancing out the immune system, and we're starting to use it in this pandemic as well. It has a really good beneficial role in regulating the immune system. So getting proper sleep is good. Getting outside, hugging trees and not people at this point, because it will upregulate our vitamin D. And luckily, again, silver lining, the weather is conducive to us being outdoors right now during this.
The sunshine that's coming.
It's huge. Diet, obviously, that's probably the biggest foundational place where we can truly have an impact is what we're putting in our mouths. Eating protein, really important to repair our bodies. Again, if we're stressed out, we're breaking down tissues, and protein is going to help to rebuild. Our liver takes protein in order to make these compounds called immunoglobulins. It's a fancy way of saying your immune cells. So protein is huge. Vegetables, fruit, that's where you're getting your antioxidants, your vitamin C, although we should be supplementing on top with some vitamin C right now. Staying away from processed foods, staying away from foods that are chemically laden and inflammatory. Why? Because you're going to get more grapes, more raisins versus grapes. Let me get that analogy right.
Yeah, exactly.
So staying away from things that are continuing to add to that inflammatory burden. You know, there's really no such thing as a free lunch. When your body is inflamed, as we see with the people that are the most predisposed to this, obesity, cancer, cardiovascular disease, immunocompromised, your body's going to take resources from somewhere else, and something eventually is going to suffer. So we need to make sure that we're getting proper nutrition into the body so that your body can do what it needs to do. We all have an immune system. If we didn't, we'd be dead. A long time. All the things that we're in contact with, but it's really a matter of supporting our immunity as much as we possibly can.
Oh, for sure. Creating that kind of strong foundation is the key to obviously long-term health, but also, you know, being able to take on some cold, flu, you know, just kind of little bits and pieces of the day, but creating that strong foundation is everything. And, you know, kind of recapping what you were saying, like you said, nutrition it's the foundation. It's kind of the backbone of our care plan at IWC, but also just long-term health in general. You know, protein, getting that in for muscle repair, like you said, antioxidants, blueberries, you know, fruits, vegetables, the fiber, the clean, fresh feeling even, and kind of that, the energy you get from those foods. Rest, like you mentioned, you know, sleep, deep sleep, resting throughout the day so you can give your body and your mind a chance to repair and detox a little bit. Fresh air, movement, like you said, it's so nice outside now that kind of it's working for us, working in our favor a little bit. Fresh air, hug those trees, kind of some grounding exercises even. Put your feet in the sand, in the dirt, in the grass, something that gives you emotional, you know, uplift, if you will, that's really going to help de-stress your body, and walking more and everything like that. I'm going to be doing a webinar.
And nature too, I'm just going to interject real quick. Nature we know is so wonderful to not only give us negative ions and see the beauty, but there's been so much research on ecopsychology and how being in nature has such a positive impact on our mood. So right now, when we are literally saturated in worry and anxiety, is a really good time to be getting out into nature. Because definitely. We also can't make proper decisions and good decisions when we're stressed out. And now is a really, really important time to make sure that every single decision counts. You know, we're talking about this idea of prevention, and yes, social distancing is really important. That's what we're doing. Yes, personal protective equipment is really, really important, but from prevention, all of the things that we're doing now is what is going to make us healthier when this is all over and the next virus comes, or there's another pandemic, or heaven forbid, we're going to be faced with other challenges at some point in our life.
Yeah.
And so doing some of these really, really basic things are so foundational. We talk about this a lot in our office. Supplements are wonderful and they're there to support your physiology. But unless the foundation is laid, they're just not going to be as effective as they are possibly when everything else is in place.
Yeah, for sure. And I like that, the idea of prevention, right? I think as our care and functional medicine as a whole is rooted in prevention, and I think as a whole right now, the world is kind of being hit home with the idea of prevention and being preventative of obviously COVID-19, but any germs, any spread of disease, and that's, social distancing, washing your hands, cleaning your groceries when you get them home. This idea of prevention and things like that, I think people are starting to get it a little bit now, which is good, and kind of taking that idea, bringing it forward into everyone's future of prevention of disease needs to be taken just as seriously as being preventative right now of COVID-19, so that's being
Absolutely
preventative of diabetes, high blood sugar, high blood pressure, inflammation, these types of long-term diseases that we're seeing, we need to be preventative of. And it's kind of that silver lining, but underlying theme that people are kind of getting, but hopefully that kind of brings it to the forefront of their mind, like, I should be a bit more preventative.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of patients are talking a lot more about accountability and realizing, how important it is to be doing things during this process. And I think initially it's very interesting because with COVID-19, people became accountable for other people. It was to protect other people, to protect the elderly, to protect their family members. But there's a lesson in this of being accountable, and we're the only people that can hold ourselves accountable to our everyday choices, which is all the things that we're talking about. All of those little things add up over time to either move towards health or further away from health.
Yeah.
And in talking with patients, even in the last couple of weeks, since we're all sitting at home, quite a few of them have said that let me rephrase. If they were feeling the way that they were feeling when they first came to IWC, they're pretty certain that they would have gotten sick at some point, because many of our patients have been exposed to COVID-19 through family members, through coworkers before the stay-at-home order went into place. And knock on wood, everybody's doing really, really, really well. But a lot of patients have said these things, that they feel that this was actually the right time to really take charge of their health. And so for those people sitting at home who are feeling like they're kind of safe, it still is a really good time to take charge of your health. Even if you're not worried about COVID, you're not worried about the pandemic, eventually we're all going to be released out of our corners to go back out into the world. And, we are responsible for other people to be as healthy as possible. We want to be good wives and good friends and good parents and all those things. But we also want to, I think, consider how we want to feel when this is all over.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a big one. I think a lot of times when I am talking to patients and they're, having a tough time with making these changes or sticking to a change or whatnot, and maybe they're on vacation or it's kind of this short-term thing, I always say, okay, how do you want to feel when this stage is over, when you're back from vacation, or when we're kind of back to living our normal life? Do you want to feel like 4 to 6 weeks just kind of went by and now you're bloated, you're not feeling well, your sleep is off, you haven't really moved? Or do you want to, not have any loss of gain, right? You're still eating well, you can still be consistent, you're still moving, you kind of say, okay, when this is moving forward and this is done, I'm back to kind of living outside again, I want to feel like there was some positive movement forward after this, so asking yourself, how do I want to feel? Jot a couple things down, write that down and look on that each day. How do you want to feel when the week is over, when we're back to living normal lives again. And I think that's a big one for sure. Like you were saying, taking control of your own actions, your own behavior, is the only way to be preventative, but it's the only way to create change, to create action, to better yourself, better your health, and then in turn better everyone else's health around you. It's kind of, if you weren't washing your hands, if you weren't social distancing, that's obviously not taking any care for your own self, but then also no care for others either. And so it comes down to even the littlest of decisions that you're making in your own health day to day, So I completely agree with kind of what you were saying before then. And I know we've said this a lot, but it's, if not now, then when? And I think you have a lot of thoughts on that as well, because there's no better time than right now, given the situation of our world, our health, to have action, to be preventative, to take your health seriously and make a couple changes and look at your life a bit more like, what changes can I make to better myself, and really take this as a reason to do that.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's, not to sound harsh, but this idea that there's nobody coming to save you, right? And that's kind of, I think, the initial feeling when we first went into our hunker down mode, that there was a tremendous amount of fear around this. And again, fear and stress can be really mobilizing. But as human beings, we have really short memories, and we're also wonderfully self-sabotaging. So we don't always want to do the things that are good for us. But it's really a matter of consistency and continuity, hard work, doing it again, doing it every single day. So I think that this is a much gifted reset if we can see some of the good in it.
Oh, for sure.
A lot of my patients, and I'm sure the same is true for you and for myself, are picking up new behaviors, whether it's meditating in the morning or going for a walk after dinner with their kids or playing board games at night rather than working or being on social media. There's these new habits that are being adopted during this time that are kind of forcing us to slow down. Reconnect, think about things. And so, the question is, what do you want to be bringing forward into your life when all this is said and done and we have no idea what that's going to look like? What do you want to carry forward? And then also reflecting on, what are the things that aren't working for you that you really don't like? And that could be anything. You might realize that you don't like having to get your hair cut. You might realize that you don't like certain things that you're forced to do every single day, that you're willing to let go of because you do them because you feel that you have to do them.
100%. I kind of taking this time to reflect on what parts of your previous life, your regular, ordinary life that you was living prior, what part of that was stressful? What part, are you missing? Like, okay, I love these parts of it, and I definitely want to keep that going. How can I bring that into my kind of day-to-day right now? But also, what am I excited to get back to? And on the flip side, like you were saying, what parts of this, my previous life or whatnot, was causing me stress? What am I not really missing doing, like your hair or, whatnot? But what parts was really stressing me out? Work, family, health, life related, whatnot. And kind of taking the two, really reflecting on those and moving forward with it, and I think that changes the idea of stress, health, and those types of things, and I know in the beginning of this, we were talking about, why am I so stressed out when I, don't really have any reason to be, and we kind of dived into what stress is on the body, what that looks like, what's stressing us out now, just being this unknown and change of normalcy. How do we kind of combat that a little bit with protein, clean eating, gluten, dairy, sugar, kind of reducing those, getting movement, getting fresh air, rest. Those are, kind of the big ones there too. And I'm going to be doing a webinar later this week to dive into that a bit more, just kind of more in depth on those areas and whatnot. So definitely take a look out for that, but kind of bring it back around to this idea of being preventative, being forward moving, taking control, taking responsibility for your own daily actions and creating new habits that make you feel good, that make you feel less stressed. And just, again, if not now, given the situation, then when are we going to reflect and take action and make change in our own life and our own health? And I really don't think there's any better time than right now. That's all we got right now. So any other parting words of wisdom? I'm sure people will have some comments and questions that we can always do more of these, like I said. So if everyone watching is liking this kind of quick chit chat video, we'll definitely do more. But was there any last minute things that you wanted to mention, or?
Yeah, I think in the action steps, just also making sure that we're being compassionate with ourselves, finding that balance between realizing this is a really unusual situation and that all of those stressors are completely normal. Everything we're feeling is completely normal. Feeling exhausted is completely normal. Realizing that it does have physiological effects. So what you're feeling isn't just something going on in your head. It is actually impacting your sleep and your immune system and your mood and your memory and your decision-making skills. But then also being proactive and realizing that there are steps that you can take to move forward. And not all of those have to be done today or tomorrow.
Yes,
picking one or two things off the list and slowly moving towards actionable change. And I think the big thing that's going to come out of this for so many of us that has an impact on our mood is just gratitude, being so grateful for what we do have. There's a lot of things that many of us are missing that we probably would have seen as kind of annoying and chores before. And I think that's, kind of going full circle to what we just chatted about, of like, what are the things that we don't want to be doing anymore, but also realizing that things like, having a grocery store to go to is really, really a pretty abundant thing. Not everybody in the world has a grocery store down the street, let alone 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So having gratitude for the things that we do have, and just reflecting on really how blessed we are and how we want to be living our lives moving forward.
Oh, 100%. Being so grateful, being so thankful to, the teachers, to moms, parents, like all working so hard right now, but being, so thankful for what we do have and being aware of those things now. I think a lot of us are, which is huge. So, having gratitude for sure for everything that we've got going on and people in our life, and like you mentioned, being gentle with ourselves and our emotions, because they're all very valid. It's all very valid. But yeah, anything else?
No, I could talk about this forever. Let's kind of leave it as is and see where it goes. We'll do another one as questions percolate in. Hopefully there's some interest and maybe some good actionable steps and some talking points that we can revisit.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm sure we'll see everybody else again, hopefully soon. But thanks again for being here. Talk to you guys later.
Thanks, Rachel. That's awesome.
Bye.
Bye.